Good morning, church. It's good to see you this morning. I hope everybody's well. I hope everybody's safe. I hope you're enjoying your time in your homes and with your family. I pray that we'll have a blessed time of worship today. I'm excited to be able to be here to bring you a message from God's holy word. Let's go and let's pray before we begin. Holy Father, full of grace and mercy, compassion and kindness, we thank you for your physical and spiritual blessings upon us. Thank you for your strength, for your comfort, and your protection during this pandemic. May we look to you for help each day as we walk through this time together as your children. Enlighten us, Lord, and encourage us through your word today. Help us to think deeply about what you are telling each of us. And then help us to take this message to the world by our words and by our actions. Lord, help us to practice all of this with compassion, kindness, and with a merciful heart. We pray all this in Jesus' holy name. Amen. In 2011, Josh Ripley was running a cross-country meet in Andover, Minnesota. He was making his way through a 2-mile course when he heard a terrible scream. He looked up and he saw a Lakeville South runner who was down, who was on the ground writhing in pain. He noticed everyone was ignoring him and just running on past. This disturbed Josh. So Josh Ripley immediately decided he needed to help the fallen runner. He saw that he was holding a bloody ankle and was in a lot of pain. So Josh stopped. He immediately picked up the fallen runner and he carried him on his back to the starting line over half a mile where all the coaches were. When he got there, they rushed the runner to the hospital and he needed 20 stitches to close the wound. He had been accidentally spiked by another runner in the race. Josh Ripley, after he got done carrying the runner, then started the race over and ran the whole race, even though he finished dead last. But he finished with an ovation. When they asked why he stopped, Ripley said this, and I quote, "I didn't think about my race. I knew I needed to stop and help him. It was something I would expect my other teammates to do. I'm nothing special. I was just in the right place at the right time." Josh Ripley did the right thing. He was honored at his school board the next week for exemplary character and sportsmanship, even though he finished dead last. Let me ask you a question. How many times do we honor athletes for finishing dead last? Not very often, do we? But we need to take lessons from him because he did the right thing. He showed great humility. He showed quick thinking. He showed compassion, and he showed how we should look out for our neighbors around us. We live in a world that teaches us to look out for number one, to take care of ourselves and maybe a few others that we love. I deeply believe in taking care of those we love, but I also deeply believe in caring for others as well. Today we're going to talk about how Christians need to have compassion, kind hearts, and mercy for those around us. We need to think of others much more than we think of just ourselves. The key to loving others and serving others is to have the compassion and kind heart that Jesus had. So we're going to open our study today with 1 John 3, 16 and 17. It's about compassion. In 1 John 3, 16 and 17, it says, "This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers. If anyone has material possessions and sees his brother in need, but has no pity on him, how can the love of God be in him? Dear children, let us not love with words and with tongue, but with actions and in truth." The question is what love is. This is how we know what it is. Christ laid down his life for us on the cross. So we're to lay our lives down for others. That means that love is living in us. We see our brother's needs. We use what we have to help them. We have pity on them, or compassion, sympathy might be another way to say that. But it says, how can the love of God be in us if we don't meet these needs, if we ignore them? If it's not that there's something wrong in our heart that is very essential for every Christian to have, we need to look deeply and realize that we need to have love and compassion and pity on others. You see, our love that God gives us must move us. Our compassion and pity must move us to actions. Words are useful and they can be helpful, but many times we have to use our time, our talents, our efforts, and even our money to help others. We need to make sure that we're not afraid to do that. To understand how love and compassion must move us, I want to define the word compassion and a few other words that I think will help us understand a little bit better what I'm saying in this study. The word compassion means to feel passion or desire with someone, or to enter into one's sorrow and pain. To feel for someone from the bowels, from your inner self, strong feelings that compel us to act on their behalf. That's from the Holman's Bible Dictionary. Here's some possible words we might put in there that go with compassion. Pity, to be sorry or feel sorry for, to grieve over or to suffer with, to mourn with, to have empathy with, or to participate in their grief. Here's some other words I want to define along with compassion. Here's the word pity from the Bible Dictionary. A sense of sympathetic sorrow for the unfortunate. In this respect, pity is the emotional side of mercy. It is desire to help people that are in trouble and they're in unfortunate situations. To sympathize, from the Bible Dictionary, it says to suffer alongside someone else. Kindness, one's consideration of the condition and needs of their fellow man. And mercy, the aspect of God's love that caused him to refrain from giving us what we deserve, punishment and death. It is showing compassion and kindness instead. God does that well. That's something we need to work on. But I love the definition here of empathy. I don't know where I heard this, but I wrote it down one time during a sermon that somebody else was giving. So I can't give anyone credit, but I like this. Empathy is your pain in my heart. Say it again. Empathy is your pain in my heart. It means I have pity on you. I have compassion. I sympathize with you. I want to do kind things to you. I want to show you mercy like God has shown me mercy. If we're going to love others and do good for them, we must cultivate compassion, pity, sympathy, kindness, mercy, empathy, whatever we want to call it. When we do this, love will flow out of us to others in all that we say and all that we do. We cultivate these things through prayer, through studying the Bible, but also studying the life of Jesus, and by asking God to work in us and mold us to become like Christ. We have to cooperate with God in this work. We have to ask him to change us, to submit to those changes he wants to make in our character. As the love and mercy of God permeates our life, it changes us so that we become more compassionate, sympathetic, kind, and merciful. We also become more empathetic, where we can feel others' pain or need in our own heart, so we can walk alongside them and make a difference. So we'll look at a few examples from the life of Jesus to make this point. In Matthew 14, 13 through 14, we see a situation where Jesus is going to be around people, and he's going to end up feeding them and doing some other things for them as well. Look at Matthew 14, starting in verse 13. When Jesus heard what had happened, he withdrew by boat privately to a solitary place. Hearing of this, the crowds followed him on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, it says what? He said he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Now, what had happened here is Jesus had heard that John the Baptizer, his cousin, had been beheaded. He was pretty grieved about this, so he wanted to withdraw to a solitary place to pray, to mourn, and to rest. They went by boat, but the crowds followed from the towns on foot. So when he saw the towns, he had what for them? Did he have anger? Did he have frustration? Did he have selfishness? Hey, I need this time alone. You need to get away. No, it says he had compassion on them. So that compassion moved him to heal their sick. He saw a need and he met it. A little bit later in that story, he sees the need there is to feed this 5,000 men, their wives, and their children. And so he feeds the whole crowd of them as well. So he saw the need and he did what was needed to meet that need. We might say it this way: he listened, he learned, and he dealt with the need that was there. I want you to turn to Matthew 20. In Matthew 20, there is a story about the healing of the two blind men. In Matthew 20, starting in verse 29, it says, "As Jesus and his disciples were leaving Jericho, a large crowd followed him. Two blind men were sitting by the roadside, and when they heard that Jesus was going by, they shouted, 'Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us.' The crowd rebuked them, told them to be quiet. But they shouted all the louder, 'Lord, Son of David, have mercy on us.' Jesus stopped and called them. 'What do you want me to do for you?' he asked. Lord, they answered, 'We want our sight.' So Jesus had compassion on them and touched their eyes. Immediately they received their sight and followed him." These two blind men were calling out to Jesus to have mercy on them as he walked by. It's interesting, the crowd ignored them, tried to silence them, even rebuked them. "You need to be quiet. He doesn't have time for you." But the blind men continued to shout, continue to plead for Jesus to have mercy on them. It says that Jesus stopped and he called out to them what they wanted. I want you to think about that. Jesus ignored the crowd. He ignored what they thought he should do, and he stopped to see what was needed from these two blind men, most likely two blind beggars. So he says, "What do you want me to do for you?" That's a good question we need to ask. Sometimes we need to ask people what they need for us to do for them. So Jesus immediately met their need. He said they want their sight. Remember, these are blind men. They're beggars. They're outcasts. They would have been unable to work, unable to function in society without major help. The crowd ignored them. The crowd tried to quiet them. But all these men wanted was just to be whole and right again. It would change their life forever if they could just see. So did Jesus say, "No way? Sorry, you don't deserve it. I don't have time for you. You aren't worthy of my time, money, or talent"? He didn't say any of that, did he? No, it says Jesus had compassion on them. He felt for them. He had this need to give them mercy, to give them help. And so he saw their need. He sympathized with it. He didn't walk away. He didn't just feel their pain and see their suffering. He was moved to do something about it. You see, the love that God gives us moves us to do something. That's what Jesus shows us. He touched their eyes, and it said they immediately received their sight. It said they followed him. Why do you think they followed him? Out of gratitude? Out of a gracious heart going, this guy changed our life forever. He changed our present and our future. We had no hope, and he gives us hope. He gives us a future. He changed everything about their life. They followed him out of that gratitude. I'm sure out of the great love they felt and appreciation for what he did for them. The love that Jesus has for others is overwhelming, all through the scriptures. He had compassion on many people, and it moved him to meet their needs. He met physical needs. He met emotional needs. But most importantly, he met spiritual needs. When there was times teaching was needed, he taught. When healing was needed, he gave that. When he needed to rebuke or encourage or admonish, he did that as well. Whatever the need was, even to forgive sin, he did that too. He healed the lepers. He raised a dead boy. He raised Lazarus. He forgave a paralytic's sins. He healed the blind, the lame, and the sick. He cast out demons. He did not judge the woman caught in adultery. And he saved the criminal on the cross, just to name a few. Jesus wants us to have mercy. He wants us to have compassion. He wants us to be kind. In Matthew 9, it's interesting what he says to the Pharisees, starting in verse 9 through 13. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." So Jesus meets Matthew, this tax collector, and he asks him to follow him. So Matthew gets up and goes with him. Jesus goes to his house and eats with him, breaks bread with him, fellowships with him, and Matthew's friends who were tax collectors and other sinners. We don't know what that exactly means, but people that have done bad things. So just as disciples are eating with them, and the religious people are pointing fingers. These people that are powerful, that are important, they're self-righteous. The Pharisees, teachers, they were law keepers. They're critical of Jesus for eating with sinners. How dare he eat with sinners and bad people? But Jesus says it's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. Jesus came to take care of sinners, to meet their needs, to take care of people that had problems, that needed him, that believed in him. And so he says to them, he says, "But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." Jesus called for the Pharisees to learn something that they missed. They had missed the call to mercy. They knew about the law and about law keeping. They knew how to tithe and give sacrifices. They knew how to follow the letter of the law. How far can I carry my mat on Sunday and not be work? That's the things they worried about. But they missed the spirit of the law. They missed the heart of what God wanted. Love for the weak, compassion on the hurting, help for the poor, to take care of widows and orphans, concern for the needs of people, meeting needs for everyone. Obedience to God is needed in our doctrine. I agree with that. But we dare not miss the point here. We must understand that God's love, his compassion, his kindness, and his mercy is for all of us, for undeserving sinners. And that is something we get and then we give to others. That understanding of that drives us to have mercy and compassion, kindness, and love for others. Jesus desired the Pharisees to see the needs are all around them that need to be met. The masses needed them, but they missed it all. That's interesting because that's why the people loved Jesus and followed him, and they didn't like the Pharisees and many times ignored them. Jesus spoke the language of love to the people in kindness and compassion. It is the language that even the blind can see and the deaf can hear. Let me say that again. Jesus spoke the language of love to the people in kindness and compassion. It is a language that even the blind can see and the deaf can hear. Everybody appreciates kindness and compassion. So what does this mean for us? Question number 1. Who did Jesus show the most compassion and kindness to? The poor, the needy, the weak, the sick, the outcasts, the hurting, the outcasts that were untouchables, like the lepers. But he also, when you make this list, it was those who believed in him, those who were humble in heart, and those who desired his mercy. We need to follow suit. Because who did he not show as much compassion and kindness to? Those who were self-righteous, judgmental, decided they couldn't have anything to do with those people that we just listed. We don't want to be among those people. We need to be like Jesus. So we need to remember that kindness and compassion are always within our power, even when fondness is not. Samuel Johnson. Through the years, as I've done different things for people as a minister of the gospel, sometimes you're not very fond of that person or the situation they may have gotten themselves in. But the compassion and love of Christ help me to overlook that and to reach out and help them anyway. Mercy is when we have an immediate regard for their needs, for the pain that they're having. Jesus did this on a daily basis. We need to do the same. When we practice compassion and kindness and empathy, it changes two people. It changes us, and it changes the person we show it to. Kindness and compassion change both hearts, and neither heart is ever the same. When we have compassion and kindness in our heart, it helps us to see others in a different light. It dims our judgmental attitudes and feelings. It helps us walk in others' footsteps. We see what they're going through. Compassion and kindness lead us to listen, to see needs, to meet needs, and to invest time, energy, and talents in others. Compassion and kindness lead us to see the potential of others and not just their faults and failures. We see what they can be, not just what they are. Jesus inspires me to see past the ugliness in people's lives to the heart that needs to be filled with Jesus. So another question. What do you remember the most about the people who have made a difference in your life? Do you remember their kindness, their thoughtfulness, their empathy, their compassion, and their mercy? I bet you do. You remember them being there to help you, to guide you, to love you, to support you, to care for you, and to comfort you. You remember how much difference they have made in your life. Are these events always grandiose? No, many times they're not grandiose at all. They're just small events in everyday life that you will remember forever, and the others will remember forever as well. Remember, compassion makes all the difference in the world. Not too long ago, I was really struggling with something. I was at a conference, a seminar in Amarillo. It was for preachers and elders and for church leaders. And they gave us a time to ask questions. And I was asking some questions about this particular thing I was struggling with, and I was really hurting. I was sitting there with my elders, and I had already told them what was going on, and they had prayed with me, and they were compassionate toward me. But some other men came over, some elders from other towns. Some I knew, some I did not. One of the men that came over was Lauren Harper. He is my wife's uncle. And Lauren and these other men gathered around me, and they prayed for me. They talked to me. They encouraged me. They spent time with me. They gave me their emails and phone numbers and told me to continue to keep in touch with them as I needed help dealing with this issue. I'll never forget that great kindness they showed me that day, that compassion, that sympathy. Men came and put their hands on me. They rubbed my shoulders. They hugged on me. They felt my pain, and they prayed with me for God to help me in that difficult time. Isn't that an amazing thing? It's awesome to experience compassion and kindness. It makes a big difference. Josh Ripley made a big difference in another kid's life by what he did. No matter what happens in Josh Ripley's life, in this other kid's life, that kid will always remember that of all those people that went by, Josh stopped and helped him and took care of him. He'll remember that Josh showed him a great kindness in a moment of need. As Christians, we have great opportunity to change the world. We change the world by being kind and compassionate to sinners of every stripe, to people that have need, to people that are struggling and hurting. We have to look past all that. We have to look past those things that we think are holding them back and just love them like Christ would love them. When we do that, we're doing what God intended for us to do. Then we can give them the message of Christ, not just his love, but his sacrifice for them. But that kindness and compassion will open the door that maybe nothing else will ever be able to do that. So go out and be kind and compassionate this week. I know that we can't physically go out and meet the need of every person around us because of the things going on, but we can still encourage them. We can still love them. We can still do things for them to make things better. And we know that this soon will pass, and we'll be able to get out and do more things. So please show this kindness and compassion in your heart to others today. Remember, some people will never read the Bible, but they will only see the Bible that you show them when they see Jesus in you. Go be Jesus this week. God bless. Have a great week. I love you each one. I hope to see you again on Wednesday night, 7 o'clock. Goodbye.